What is going on, Movie Meals, thank you, Movie Meal patrons, Kimberly, Karen. The thumbnail, those faces, we chose those faces because the heck are we talking about today?
It's called clickbait. We got
Oh, that's what the kids do these days.
it. Today, I thought we were going to be talking about what's going on with streaming and all these silly little mergers and divorces going on through the industry. That's what I remember us talking about today.
True.
And I sent you the list 5 minutes ago.
That's also true. Hang on, I got a text I got to respond to. All right.
Wow, brutal.
Kyle, why don't
right
you
on
go
our
ahead?
show.
Why don't you go ahead and talk about two movies that I've already talked about? So, well, I guess first, we will not be having any episodes in the next probably 2 full weeks. We probably won't see us for 3 weeks. Well, that's not fully true. I might get bored and make a couple shorts. Look out for those.
Oh,
But you might not really hear from us till close to Superman coming out or the week before Superman comes out because we got busy things to do. I'm traveling across the country, got a wedding to throw. Kyle's got to be there, I guess.
I mean, I'd like to be there. Can I still come?
Were you invited?
Not really. You said it might happen, and then I didn't hear back from you. So
It's literally the best man. A lot of weddings going on around here. Yeah, so we won't be here for a bit. Not that, it affects the 5 viewers we get weekly.
But thank you guys.
Yeah. So Kyle saw Ballerina and Bring Her Back. I want to start with Bring Her Back because he wasn't as hyped about it as some other people on this channel who have taste. So go ahead, Kyle. Why'd you hate it?
Why did I hate Bring Her Back? No, I liked Bring Her Back. I just didn't love it like I wish I did. I thought though the brothers Filippo, I apologize if I'm mispronouncing their names. The two brothers, I thought it was a pretty impressive follow-up to their first movie, Talk to Me, just in terms I thought their directing style and the stories that they're telling were a bump up throughout Bring Her Back. I thought performance-wise it was very strong, and I thought performance-wise of like the themes of grief leading to bringing out the worst in people or just bringing out trauma and triggers that just are prevalent throughout the story. I thought that was just I thought it was pretty nuanced all around, and I enjoyed elements of the story that they were telling. Imagery-wise and direction-wise, I thought, like I said, it was a bump up from the first one. I thought that the directing was a bit more showing in this one. A bit more showy, excuse me. I think I not necessarily prefer one or the other, but I just saw some elements of their directing where I was like, oh, they're taking a step up and they're learning their craft more, and I was just appreciative of that. I think when it comes to the imagery, though, that's like in my positives and my negatives of this movie. On the one hand, I like that they were wanting the imagery to be a bit more in your face and wanting it to be a bit more bloody, much more gruesome. Just have elements that definitely make you squirm in your seats. I know that it did for me, so it does like the trick very well. But at the same time, I don't know if necessarily going that graphic and going that intense worked well for the rest of the story that was being told. So it was kind of felt like they were two separate halves that weren't trying to make the whole piece necessarily work together. I just didn't feel like elements of like some of the imagery were very authentic with the story. They just felt a little forced. So that's why I just didn't wind up loving the movie as much as I wish I did. Otherwise, I thought that was a very strong movie, a very strong horror movie. So I encourage people to check it out, even though I have those gripes about it.
Oh, it's good. Your gripes are wild. And you saw Ballerina. What'd you think of Ballerina?
I had fun with Ballerina.
Ballerina's good time, eh? John Wick just puts out good content, okay?
Yeah, very good movies. Ballerina, I enjoyed Ana de Armas for the most part. I thought that she did very well when it comes to working through the action sequences, and some of the emoting of the character was very well. done. There was a few scenes, not very many, but a few scenes where I was kind of curious if they were reshoots or not, because some of the acting, not just from her, but from some of the other cast, was a bit more stilted. It didn't feel very authentic, in my opinion. But I wonder if that was like the reshoots thing. Like maybe there was just some scenes that just weren't doing the characters or the actors like much justice to them. I'm not sure. That's just me speculating. But the cast in general is very good outside of Ana de Armas. And I thought direction wise, I asked you last week, Alex, about if it felt like two different directors were at the helm of those action sequences, just because of those rumors of Stileski from the John Wick movies coming in to do reshoots for the action. For me, I didn't quite feel that throughout the story. Not that they were some of the best sequences of the franchise necessarily, but just that they all felt like cohesive with each other. They felt like they were part of the same movie to me. And they all had good builds. Like I thought, like it wasn't just like up and down on which action sequences were better. They all like worked for making the rising action work very well and for making it like an epic climactic sequence at the end of it all. So I thought the action was just very well shot. I just would say script wise, it's not a bad script or there's not a bad story within this, but something about it just doesn't feel like it's sticking the landing on making you fully bought into her arc or making you buy into like the catalyst that sets things off.
Yeah, just killed a puppy.
Yeah. I mean, it's going the same route as John Wick, where it's like it's simplifying the reason why she's doing all this. Kind of like in John Wick, it's a simple reason: you killed his dog, so he's going to go after you.
Yeah,
revenge story. And yeah, like John Wick for me, like I wouldn't say that it like the John Wick story definitely doesn't like have such a great script to where like it works completely, but it does the job enough to get everything else moving. Ballerina almost sticks the landing when it comes to that. Like you still will end up having a good time and still end up enjoying the action, but I wouldn't say that it quite sticks the landing in terms of making you fully bought into the story, just because it somehow has a hard time really nailing like the initial setup of everything to make you be like, okay, now we're going to be in the thick of this with her. So yeah, good action movie, maybe even an above average action movie, but does it nail down like the story quite as well as I would have liked it to? No, but it won't take away from you just having an enjoyable experience watching it. So good otherwise.
Yeah, I liked it. I love the scenes with the flamethrower. That was cool. That was the action
great sequence
scene that I was talking about last week, where it was like every John Wick movie kind of has one scene that you're like, all right, this is really, really, really cool, and I really liked that.
I do want to say, I think some of the world building stuff within like how the John Wick universe or whatever works, I thought there was some elements to like the expanding universe I thought worked well within the story, but the inclusion of John Wick himself, which isn't a spoiler like it is in the trailers, I like Keanu's presence obviously, but I don't think he's working well within the script like on a narrative level. I just don't. It felt a bit more shoot in than feeling authentic.
Really? Oh, I disagree with that. I thought it did a really good job. I think it makes sense because he's on his little break, taking out before he takes out all the heads. And I mean, he eventually says, "I'm back," and like that's his people's, the Roma Rosca, and like it makes sense that she'd be like, "Hey, I've got an agent. I need you to kind of come in and take care of this for me. Sure, we're going to incite a war." So I thought that made sense. It's a top assassin. So
yeah, I mean. It's not egregious. I could see it working for people, including yourself. Like, it doesn't surprise me if people enjoy like him being involved. But I don't know. I just think tying it in with like her story specifically, I just didn't feel like. I don't know. I guess I just didn't feel like they quite had the chemistry down, or there just wasn't enough to really feel like it's a good enough reason for him to be involved. But
I disagree.
Yeah, that's fair.
But they worked good.
Yeah, that's fine.
It's just me though. All right. Next on the docket here, we were going to talk about the world of streaming. And,
yes.
One of these I didn't even realize that you had put in our show notes that Disney is buying the rest of Hulu and making Hulu completely their own. They're buying the whole streaming site from Universal. I pulled up an AP article about it that Disney will pay Comcast, NBC Universal nearly $439 million for its stake in Hulu, taking full control of the streaming service. Back in 2023, it acquired a 33% stake in Hulu from Comcast for at least $8.6 billion. The amount reflected Hulu's guaranteed floor value of $27.5 billion.
And this is coming off the coattails of what we talked about quickly last week, where Discovery and Warner Bros. Are going through a divorce to where a lot of the debt is going to... They're about to head towards divorce. Like, it's supposed to happen like mid-26.
I think just the wording, when you say divorce, it makes me think that the companies are actually separating, and they're not. They're just separating publicly in trade stock options. So that they can have them separate. It's not like Discovery is now not part of Warner Brothers anymore. They will all still be under the same head. From what we read last week. Yeah.
Gotcha. Well, they still are also like moving stuff around throughout the company, right? Isn't a lot of the debt going towards like the TV side, like the cable side of things?
All TV that's not like the premium content. And this makes sense that now he's like, we're going to switch the name back to HBO Max or something. And it's like, all right, dumb. But anyway,
or he could have done that always. No, I just thought with these two things happening back to back practically, and then us last week just complaining about the state of television and streaming in general, that was just a good point to discuss, like where things are at, like currently with all of that stuff. Like it's still just on like the level of frustration, but it also is just on the level of what I was saying previously, where it just doesn't feel like these companies, obviously these companies are wanting to make a profit at the end of the day. That's always been, what they are supposed to be doing from the ground up. But I don't know, just maybe it's just us focusing on headlines and stuff, but it just seems like the past few years they really just forget wanting to own something, instead of just trying to make headlines of like, you get this, now you get this, now I get this, and now we'll split this, and everyone will think, well, we're geniuses, where instead we're just asking for good quality television and affordable quality television. And
you don't need to spend $100 million on to make.
Yeah.
And Comcast is the reason for this. So that's interesting because Comcast did this, right? I'm looking back at the Variety article we quickly went over here last week. So the company is emulating the strategy recently placed by rival Comcast. The conglomerate is breaking up NBC Universal, which plans to place the bulk of its cable networks in a newly publicly traded spinoff called Versant, while keeping its broadcast and streaming assets under a better-known entity as NBC. And now that's interesting that now NBC and Comcast are selling Hulu. I didn't even, realize that NBC was Hulu. I think I did. NBC doesn't have another one, though, right?
They have Peacock.
They have Peacock, so they have two of them. So maybe they're just like, Peacock's fine. Go ahead, Disney, take the rest of Hulu. Like, we don't need to keep splitting this. It's putting us in debt.
Yeah, I mean, it could be that. It could be Peacock cutting their losses on one thing so they can be all in on their own streaming service. While Disney, they may still want Hulu, so that way they can not only have like a split between what is family quality Disney level type stuff on one platform, and then all the adult stuff that they own can be on the Hulu service. Plus, with Hulu, it involves like television rights from a lot of different people, a lot of different companies. So I bet Disney could reap the rewards of having all that money, because they have to be, the people are, or the companies are paying for things to be on television technically, right? Like, I don't really know the ins and outs of that, but I would assume that's also a big game plan of Disney's, is that they can basically be paid for television.
Yeah, probably.
Just a guess.
If you have hold in something, you're sharing Hulu, but Disney's kind of been the main advertiser of Hulu since they kind of took more control and took control
Mhm.
of it. Now you own it. They'll probably just merge them all into one thing at some point, I bet, and we will just have Disney Plus or something. But
Yeah,
maybe they'll keep
maybe.
their little bundle. Maybe they won't. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not sure because it's funny that like bundling is becoming the key to making streaming like
Cable.
worth it for studios. Because I feel like studios are realizing that streaming is kind of a mistake of their own making, but they don't want to admit it. But they're seeing that bundling is a key for it all to stay afloat. So I wouldn't be shocked if like they just want Hulu to help with like the bundling effect to keep things afloat. But then again, Disney is weirdly protective about like brand identity and like what constitutes as like a Disney branded thing versus like was constituted as like just an adult piece of entertainment that is adjacent to Disney.
Yeah. I think this is all Netflix's fault.
Well, yeah, yeah. Well,
And I've
it's
got a
funny.
bone to
Like,
pick with Netflix right now. So, but you go
oh,
ahead.
well, I'll just say this quickly because I bet your anecdote's going to be awesome to listen to.
Well, you've heard it before.
Like with Netflix, I think for them it was. It almost feels like it was accidental on Netflix's part.
100%.
Um, I think they just obviously found like a market where people want things immediately, and not just like movies through the mail, but just movies like on their television immediately, or just television just sent to them immediately, I suppose. With like the streaming thing and with the
Yeah.
watching, binging everything all at once type of method. But for studios have always wanted a way to not have a middleman, like mainly movie theaters or like advertisers for television. And they want to be greedy essentially and have all of their movies and all of their television go to themselves and have it all be profited straight towards them instead of like expanding out and having to share profits with someone like a theater or an advertiser.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, unlike Netflix that somehow is able to make that happen, everyone else just can't replicate that. It's just not feasible. And they forgot or didn't realize somehow that that feasibility is impossible to do.
Well, with Netflix too, it was like, all right, they said, how can we fix, because they tried to sell themselves to Blockbuster, and then they're like,
Mm.
okay, how we want to be able to make it easier for people to get their movies. It eventually turns into streaming. YouTube is the big thing at the time. I mean, YouTube truly starts everything in terms of streaming and whatnot. So then
Yeah.
they're seeing something like YouTube and they're like, some exec in a boardroom was like, what if we just put all shows people like on one spot? And so
Mm-hmm.
then it becomes kind of the start of the nostalgia bait. And it's like, all right, this new thing that costs $6.99 a month. That went with the thing I was already doing where I got my DVDs in the mail or my movies in the mail and stuff, and now it's like, okay, now I can watch all of Friends, I can watch all of The Office, that's really cool. And then Netflix goes, what if we made our own show? And they end up talking with the first real big hits they had were Orange is the New Black and House of Cards. And David
Mm-hmm.
Fincher comes along and says, I'll make you a show. Let's put a little bit of money in, like you're a network, and let's make our own show. And then somebody in the boardroom's like, instead of doing it weekly, let's just this is clearly what people are doing. They're binging all these shows all at once. Like we're seeing our data saying that they're watching so much. Let's just drop the whole thing. Let's give the people what they want when they want it. And at the time, that was some revolutionary idea. And it was like, okay, that's kind of cool. I get to watch all of a season of something really fast. And then everybody copied it. And everybody realized we don't like this. We don't really want everything all at once. And now this one network that was $6.99, $4.99 for me to be able to watch Friends and The Office and all these older shows that I really liked and movies here and there. They would have Harry Potter here and there, and they were just licensing these products out. Now everything's scattered, and now it is just I have to figure out where to find it. What am I paying?
It's a
And now,
Wild West.
and now everything is, the prices have skyrocketed. I think people have realized I don't really want everything all at once. Netflix, this is my gripe, has clearly, and we've been saying it for years, they've clearly backtracked, and they're doing everything they can to fool you into thinking that they haven't. But that's what their plan is. The fact that Stranger Things, the final season that we have waited 5 years for, that was really, truly Netflix's hit, where Netflix was like, oh, wow, we can compete with HBO in terms of premium content, was Stranger Things. And that they are releasing Stranger Things, the final season, in 3 parts, which is part 1 in November, part 2 on Christmas, and part 3 on New Year's, is dumb. It's so dumb. I would rather you just release one weekly between November and December, or just give it all to me at once. Like, if you want the narrative to stick, great, but they so don't want to roll back on their thing that this is what they've chosen to do, and it's so dumb. It gets my blood boiling.
It is frustrating that they don't want to roll back on what they initially started with, like the binging premise, but I think at the time when they first started this model of television, it was okay because everyone else wasn't doing it. Netflix, in a weird way, was like a special thing.
It was a cool thing, yeah.
Yeah, but it was its own thing. But then once years later, when everyone's doing that same model, it doesn't feel special anymore, even though it's weird thinking of like putting the term special next to a model like binging, where instead special for me is kind of like waiting things out. But it did feel like that. Like, it did feel really special when like your favorite show from Netflix dropped and it was all there and all available. And you made a good point. You mentioned licensing being a key for Netflix early on when they became the first streaming service, because licensing like isn't entirely what helps them keep afloat, but it is a big component of why it kept them afloat. Because and I think other studios and other companies hated that, and why they went to their own streaming models as well. They hated selling what they own, like their own price gooses.
Yeah, they can make more money.
Netflix.
Instead of Netflix saying, I'll give you, I don't know what the price would be, I'm making up a number, but they say, I'll give you $1 million per Harry Potter movie. Give me all $8 million. Yeah. They're like, oh, I can make $8 million in that month for you to have them for a year or half a year for just putting it on my own platform. And I think once everybody started pulling it, because remember, it was Friends first, right? Friends bailed, The Office bailed, and then some other big sitcoms were like, all those networks were like, we're going to put this on our own platform that people will pay for. And then Netflix was like, oh, crap.
Friends was a big deal.
Lost. Yeah.
Friends was a big deal when it came on Netflix, and then Friends was a big deal when it left Netflix. So much so that Warner Bros. Or whoever or whatever TV company they have owns it, they were like, well, we have to pay you like Netflix. We have to pay Netflix an extra X million amount of dollars I'm sorry, I'm saying this wrong. Netflix had to pay them an X amount of millions of dollars to keep Netflix for like one more year while they were still developing their streaming service. Like, that was a big deal.
Didn't they pay like $100 million or something?
It was something crazy. I don't remember the number. I almost said the entire thing wrong myself, but
I'm gonna see if I can find that article. Netflix reportedly, I found it pretty fast. New York Times article. Netflix will keep Friends. Oh no, nobody wants to pay. Nobody wants to pay. New York. Here, maybe people will not make me pay. Netflix reportedly paid $100 million to keep Friends for another year after a fan uproar. That's right. I remember everybody kind of being like, "What the heck? Like, this was why I have this in the first place," because they didn't have much back in 2019.
Yeah. I think Disney was the one that first announced the streaming service. I feel like it was Disney that set the stage for it all.
And then you get a company like Apple that is like, all right, we'll get into the game. We're not going to advertise it at all. We're going to barely do anything. And we're going to copy the HBO model, and we're going to make what we think is premium content. And it's going to be a loss, but people will flock. And that's what happened.
Yeah, Apple's model, I understand that this isn't a big deal for Apple, but clearly it's just them wanting to get into parties when it comes to awards.
Yeah,
and
100%.
rub
They just
elbows.
wanted to be there.
They're fumbling their
Amazon too.
theatrical. They're fumbling their theatrical section of things
Releases.
hard.
Why?
Yeah,
What do you mean?
they're. I have a feeling that they are realizing that when you release stuff theatrically, there's a lot of risk that involves in it, and I think as a tech company, they hate the idea of risk. I
Oh,
feel like they are going to focus more on TV and less on movies, especially movies going to theatrical.
well, F1's going to the theater, right?
Yeah, but I think they made the movie, but Warner Bros. Are the ones distributing it. That's not necessarily them handling the movie necessarily, but I'm sure they're going to get a chunk of profits out of
But
it.
is that not Apple saying this might be our way to the theaters? We will make the movie. We will pay for the movie. We're going to make someone else distribute the movie that knows what they're doing, like Warner Brothers.
We'll see, but I feel like they've already been doing that with some other movies as well. I'm just
Interesting.
trying to think. I thought Fly Me to the Moon was a similar scenario, but I could be wrong. I just get the sense that they're going to back off on theatrical and focus on TV, which I just feel like that's kind of a mistake. I feel like one, theatrical could use more competition, but two, I feel like you easily could work hard and put quality into the movies to where you could become like an alpha in the theatrical game and not just in television. Not that I really think they're an alpha in television anyway, but I don't know. I just think it's a missed opportunity, but I don't know. They're a tech company, so it's not that surprising they don't want risk.
Yeah.
Amazon's a little better. Like I feel like Amazon is distributing their own stuff and they are like and they're finding their lane, I think.
What was the
But
last Amazon movie that hit theaters?
I feel like Challengers and Saltburn
Oh, that's
and
right. They've
a
but
couple
they've
of
been
others.
playing that game for a while. Back to
Yeah.
Manchester by the Sea, wasn't that their first kind of big? Wasn't that Amazon?
I don't know if that one they distributed on their own, but yeah, that was like one of their first ones.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because it was
They've
like a
been doing
big
this for a
deal.
while. Yeah.
Yeah, they've wanted to be in there with the Hollywood bigwigs for a while too. But
But
yeah,
I mean
100 million is
they
crazy.
had a whole presentation um at CinemaCon and even Apple like didn't do that, you know. I feel like Amazon is like trying to take it seriously, especially with their acquisition of MGM. Hopefully I'm not
Well,
wrong about this. Hopefully this ages poorly, but that's just the vibe that I get off of those two
and to be
companies.
honest, them Amazon playing into the theater game is actually good for movie fans as much as Amazon stinks.
Yeah,
Because if
competition.
we want, yeah, we want competition. We don't want Disney buying everything. We don't
Mhm.
want Warner buying everything. We don't want
Mhm.
Sony buying everything. We want them all competing. Um, so yeah, which is why Amazon was like, all right, superheroes, let's go the other route. People, there's an audience for this. Let's find these comics that nobody's adapting, Invincible and The Boys and
Sure.
things like
Yeah.
that. So, but yeah, and I mean, some companies now, like you look at like Verizon and some of these different phone companies have deals where it's like, we're going to give you HBO and Netflix. We've talked to both companies, and now you can have both for, as a special deal for a year or whatever. So
Sure.
it is crazy, but seriously, nothing grinds my gears more than Netflix just absolutely going back on their model and not like acting like they didn't. And it's because it totally happened around when that second season of The Witcher came out. That's when I really remember it was like
Oh,
suddenly then Ozark was like, we're going to add this. That's at least when I remember kind of really noticing it.
sure.
And then very quickly after Ozark was like, no, we're going to split a season. We're going to do part 1 and part 2. And then in reality, and then even Crunchyroll has followed that in a way, and some animes have been released like that, but at least they're taking time to make the animation good, and they just know people are really wanting it. And this is just, they don't want to go back on it because nobody talked about them. Because I remember it was The Witcher and something else came out. It was
Oh,
something on
I don't
HBO
know.
or something that was really big. It might have been like the ending of Game of Thrones at the same time, or it might have been,
Mm.
it was something where The Witcher came out. No, because The Witcher was after Game of Thrones. It was something that everybody, I remember thinking Netflix was like clearly thinking everyone's going to love this season of The Witcher. Everybody's going to be talking about season 2. It's going to be in the narrative. And it came because they dropped the whole thing. And then the next week, the episode on HBO came out, and boom, nobody was talking about The Witcher anymore at all. Everybody was talking about whatever episode just dropped of House of the Dragon. Maybe it was House of the Dragon season 1. But I remember because it was like around Christmas or something, which is why
Yeah, I
they're
wish I
doing this
remembered. I don't know.
with Squid Game. Squid Game was cut into 2 seasons when it really wasn't kind of supposed to be at first, and it was because they wanted it to be in the narrative more, and they want people to be talking about it and things like that. And isn't Netflix doing like Netflix hotel, like a hotel or store or something that's like all their original content or something? Isn't that something they're doing too?
Oh, probably. I think even in LA, they probably have like 1 or 2 of their own theaters or something. Maybe I shouldn't say that out loud. I actually don't know. I thought I read that once, but maybe that fell through. I'm not surprised that Netflix or any other company tries to be like Disney, like tries to have their own Disney store, their own Disney merch. All these other companies are driving me nuts these past few years on like, well, we're the same as Disney. Like our brand is the same thing as Disney's, and it's like, no, it's a completely different thing. Like no one is like, oh boy, I can't wait to go to a Paramount store. I got to get a Paramount T-shirt.
Yeah,
like no one does. No one acts like that. That's crazy to think that.
True competitors with Disney at that level are Universal and Warner Brothers. They're the only two that kind of compete in that at that level.
But even still, it's like not niche, but you zero in on like the franchise that you're selling the park on. It's not like the brand is the park. Like Walt Disney World is like, or Disneyland is what you're going to see.
Because
and like, there's like Universal Land or Warner Bros. World or whatever the heck it's called. But you're going there for like Harry Potter coaster or like the Fast and Furious ride or Despicable Me, Boogaloo Tower, whatever those things are called. Like you're not going like for the Universal T-shirt and slushie. You're going for like the other themes within that. I just that's also been like something I've noticed from all these studios that drives me nuts. Like, it's not the same thing, guys.
Yeah. I looked it up because I was curious. Netflix doesn't own their own Netflix theaters, but they do own the Bay Theater and the Egyptian Theater in LA, which are 2 like historic theaters, and the Paris Theater in New York. And they own those so that then when they do exclusive things and they want all their actors somewhere for a red carpet, that's when they do it and stuff. But I briefly saw this interview back in April that I forgot about, where the CEO of Netflix said like the theater model's outdated, and that he said most of the country can't even walk to a multiplex. Like, it's like
that second part isn't wrong.
Well, I think it might be a little bit. I mean, it's
There's
wrong.
small towns that don't have theaters. They gotta drive a half hour next to the.
No, that is true. Like a good theater. Usually, even a small town will have some sort of whack local guy, doing something.
They have some whack guy in his backyard.
Yeah, but I think more of like in New York, you can walk around and you'll find a theater fairly quick and stuff.
Obviously.
But the fact that he's saying, and in this article he talks about how that Netflix is saving the movie going experience, and I think what Netflix has backwards is it's very clear that people want to go to the movies still. I mean, movies are not falling apart. We had this conversation last spring where it was If, right? It was the movie If, and it didn't do well because Dune had just come out. Dune did very well, and a couple movies that come out. Furiosa came out and didn't.
Fall Guy flopped, I think. Yeah.
A couple movies didn't go, and it was like okay, and then there was like Guardians 3, just like 2 months later, and boom, all of a sudden theaters are back or something, or it was
Marvel or Pixar
Guardians,
or something.
It was something, yeah.
And
then all of a sudden. And then theaters are back, and then all of a sudden we're back, and then this movie did really well, and this movie did very well, and right now we're seeing some movies struggle. Ballerina is about $40 million away from its budget, so it's kind of struggling. But Stitch has been a huge success. What's the other one that's been a huge success right now? That's more recent.
What else?
Is Mission Impossible considered a success at this point?
Maybe. I mean, Sinners is making his money back.
Was a success, yeah.
Yeah. There must have been another kids movie that came out that I'm spacing on. I think. I don't know. I'm trying to remember. But I get what you're saying. Like there is still a healthy appetite for like going to the theater. It's contextualized a little differently because it's like certain types of movies really hit the market big.
And that's
But
true.
there's still
And
an
that's
appetite.
true. And yeah, there
Yeah.
is the idea that like that yes, it's all sequels and big budget and this and that, but that is on the common folk. They do need to get up and go see some and not watch, Electric State and these slogs that get put on screen and stuff. But I talk to people all the time that I would definitely consider common moviegoers that are like, oh
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I just saw that ballerina movie's out. I want to go see that. Or I have people at work who like, no, I'm into movies, and they're like, is this worth going to see? And I'm like, yeah, any movie is worth going to see in the theater. You kidding me? But yes, it is. Like, go. But
Yeah,
yeah,
I feel bad for common moviegoers because obviously I think they do enjoy movies, all things considered, and do want to go out. But unfortunately, between you know pricing of everything, that they probably do think that's more of a liability than more of like an enthusiastic wanting to go out to the theater. So then they're stuck to like Netflix and streaming stuff, and I would argue that that stuff is less flattering to watch compared to like what's coming out in theaters. Like it,
oh,
but
definitely.
that's now what they're becoming accustomed. I'm not saying like brainwashing or whatever, but I don't know. I just
If
feel like they're missing
Superman,
out, and it sucks.
if Superman hits, and it's not only a commercial success, but like a critic success, but is a commercial success. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
does that does there's a lot riding on Superman, I think, because Superman is we're doing old school Superman. We're doing the happy Superman. It's by a
And no one's
director that is
happy.
now a name. Yeah, no one's happy, but it's like, but we're doing that. Superman appeals to a massive audience now because nostalgia bait is huge. So your dad wants to see it. At this point, your grandpa probably is like interested. Like
Could
people
be.
are really interested in that. There's a lot riding on Superman. I don't think it's as much as the DCEU or the DCU or whatever it is now these days, but there's a
I
lot
don't know.
riding on that. I think for moviegoers, right? Because that has the potential to be $1 billion hit.
Sure, but what would that mean outside of people liking nostalgia and what they're familiar with? I don't know if that really changes anything about movie going
I'm just saying,
itself
I think it appeals to it. Like I think there's a lot. Like if Superman makes 300 million, that's it. Not a lot of people go and see it. It's
domestically.
like,
Yeah,
yeah, no, I mean, yeah, well, I guess yeah, domestically, but
it would make more sense than worldwide, I'd say. But yeah.
yeah, but like if
Anyway,
it's
it
just
doesn't matter.
if it's considered a massive flop, I think that
Hmm.
says a little bit more of okay, this is kind of the perfect concoction for people to go to the movies right now. It's a movie about hope. It's Superman, arguably the most iconic superhero ever created. It brings in a wide audience. It really is reaching to a lot of people right now. That's what I'm talking about with nostalgia. So like if it doesn't make a ton of money and people don't go see it, then maybe we sit back and go, okay, maybe movie theaters aren't as back as we thought. But if it's a huge $1 billion success, it's like, okay, maybe like see this where am I making sense? I feel like in my head I'm making sense.
I just don't agree with what you're saying. I don't really see it contextualizing anything else outside of like maybe superhero fatigue. Um,
Okay, fair. There's some
I
superhero fatigue. That's fair.
I mean, I don't know because I still think that we're seeing nostalgia work really well. I think people still enjoy going out to the theater, but it just needs to feel like an event type situation. And so far, Superman seems to be checking off all those boxes. I guess if it
Yeah.
winds up being a Flash situation and like really underperforms, then I'd be shocked by like the movie itself not doing that well. But I don't know if I would think this is a bigger conversation outside of everything else,
No,
like
fair
business
enough.
wise.
Fair
Yeah,
enough. I don't even know if
I get
I
what you're
do.
saying.
I'm just
I
kind of
just
talking.
no, that's it. No, you're doing. You are perfect, my boo. I'm just saying. I don't know. Yeah, I just don't agree with what you're saying, but I get what you're saying.
I don't even know if I agree with myself. I am just kind of still
Spitballing.
in space. Yeah.
I'm still in space right
But
now.
speaking of space, you see that Space Balls 2 trailer?
Yeah, I caught it.
It was funny. It was funny.
Oh, it's
Their
funny.
text
I'm just
crawl being like, we've had the DCU attempt 1, the DCU attempt 2. Like, there were so many funny lines in there. Oh man, after like
they could
40
have
Marvel movies, yeah.
they could have
I
added so much more context as well. Like just the amount of
I
so much
know.
franchise in and out, and
Well,
yeah,
yeah, they talked about Harry
no, it's
Potter, Mission Impossible. They talked about a bunch of movies, but it's cool that Mel Brooks is, even in his old age, is coming back to do it. And I
mhm,
don't hate the writing team. I know Josh Gad's the big name that is writing this script and stuff, but
right.
I think there's like 4 of them doing it along with Mel, and I think that is. I like Josh Gad. I think he can be a really good writer, and he can be very funny. So I think they can pull off something good. And hey, it got Rick Moranis out of retirement.
Oh, he is back. Oh, I didn't
That's
catch
what
that.
I
Okay,
saw the other day. I don't
right
know if it
on.
was a rumor or confirmed. Let me double check that. But people saying that Rick Moranis is coming back for it would be really, really cool.
I have two takes about this announcement. Actually, do you mind if I share them both?
Yes, please.
The first one is like my own personal thing. I'm not really excited about Spaceballs 2, only because growing up with like the joke of like within the movie they want franchise they wanted to be like a franchise, and they're making fun of like that business idea of it all, and like they keep being like we could get a Spaceballs 2. Like that was always like the joke to me, and I don't really like that the joke is coming to fruition necessarily. Like I've as much as I'm excited that like Mel Brooks is, coming back and at the age that he is, like he is still kicking in and doing this thing, and there probably is a lot of passion behind this movie. But it just underwhelms the joke from like the first movie, in my opinion. That's my own personal thing. I hope everyone else
Which joke?
is
You
gonna
mean
have a
them
good time
joking
with it.
about the sequel?
Yeah. Like within the movie,
Well,
because they make fun of like Star Wars and like the franchising aspects of it
the
all.
the
And yeah,
intention though of that joke at the time was because George said you can do whatever you want, but you're not allowed to make merch, which is why they wrote a joke about
mhm,
Spaceballs 2, the quest for more money. That joke was all directed at the time
mhm.
towards just George being like, you cannot do any merchandising. Um,
Sure, but I think as time has gone on, like it
for
really is
sure.
a good joke, and I've liked that there still hasn't been a Spaceballs 2 just because that joke has grown and works so well.
Honestly,
Again, that's
if
my own personal gripe about it.
if the movie hits, I just think there's no better time for an old school spoof. There's no better time, and there's no better sequel to bring. Like, if you're gonna pick one of them from back in the day, I think this is the best time to do it. And the report too that Lewis Pullman is in talks for the movie is really funny, because he's going to probably play this version of Kylo Ren, and it's going to really poke fun at the sequels.
Yeah.
And I just think this is kind of the right time for it. I
Well,
just do.
that leads into the second thing I was going to say.
Yeah,
Between
go.
this announcement and Naked Gun the reboot,
Yeah.
I feel like it's capitalizing on two things that we're about to see coming to theaters in like the next few years. I think we're going to be obviously seeing more reboots, seeing more like sequels coming out from like these franchises, but I think they're going to do it within popular comedies. And I feel like Naked Gun and Spaceballs are going to be like the two catalysts of that. Um,
I agree with you. I think this could start the second wave of spoofs, right? There it has its wave with
sure.
the Naked Gun franchise, with all the Mel Brooks movies. Like, that had its time.
Mhm.
Even like Monty Python, like all of those kind of around the same couple decades, and then they have died. I mean, we really haven't had a real popular spoof movie probably since the what do you call them, the Scream spin-off, Scary Movie. The Scary Movie is probably the
Oh,
last
sure.
kind of dead spoof movie,
And Scary
and
Movie's coming back as well
it is.
to
But
theaters, yeah.
I think for these movies, especially with Naked Gun, more than anything, like, you could walk up to I bet you could walk up to a younger 20 teenage kid and say, have you ever heard of Spaceballs? And I think you would get some that say yes. I don't think you'd get any that say they've heard of The Naked Gun. I don't think you'll get any that aren't like very common kids. You might get some that are like, oh, Spaceballs, isn't that like a fun joke on Star Wars or something? Like they might get that. And so I'm really okay. I think we need to bring back these type of spoof comedies. I think it is the perfect time. And if all the reboot kind of aspect is we're making a spoof, but we're keeping the name, I'm all for it, because this Naked Gun movies, yes, it's somewhat looks like it's related to the original, but that just seems more in line of like, it's funny. It's a spoof. It's funny. We're going to do that because it's poking fun at what we're doing. Like it's inside baseball than it is like, I don't know. It doesn't feel so much to me as like, oh, I can't believe we're doing sequel, like we're rebooting something. Like to me, the spoof genre doesn't fall under that. The title and the name, those relations don't matter to me as much. But
sure. I think also when it comes to comedies, we have been seeing comedies try to trickle back into theaters, and they've done fine, but they just quite haven't hit the zeitgeist as much as I thought they would have at this point. So I feel like everyone in the industry is understanding that, okay, comedies are what people would like in the theaters, but maybe not like the raunchy comedies that were like sort of been seen, such as like with No Hard Feelings and I don't know, maybe one or two others I'm trying to think of now. So maybe instead, let's not do the raunchy comedy for theatrical, but do like the spoof comedy for theatrical. Maybe like that will be the ticket.
The comedy has, well, side note, speaking of Amazon, I didn't realize Spaceballs 2 is an Amazon product. That this is an Amazon MGM studio. I didn't realize that. But yeah, it is. It was exclusive in Deadline that Bill Pullman and Rick Moranis are both set to reprise their respective roles as Lone Star and Dark Helmet in the new Spaceballs movie. And ever since I watched that trailer, now all I see on TikTok and stuff are old clips from Spaceballs, and I'm just laughing. I just want to rewatch the movie now.
Great movie.
But I do wish they were calling it Spaceballs 2, The Quest for More Money, instead of just Spaceballs 2, just because to me that would be funny, and I think that name is funny.
Oh, sure, but
I had a second point. What was it? And Keke Palmer is apparently in talks. That's awesome. Keke's really funny.
In Spaceballs 2? Really?
Yeah. It's right here.
Wow.
Lone Star and Dark Helmet, new Spaceballs.
Oh, she had a comedy that came out.
And MGM Studios with Keke Palmer, too. One of Them Days, joining the cast. Is that the movie, One of Them Days?
I want to check that out, actually. That looked good. I'm sad that I missed that.
Comedy, that was my other point. Comedy has kind of taken this weird direction, right? Like, the kind of old school comedies were spoofs. Like, when I think of, like, an older comedy movie from the 70s, 80s, or even 90s for the most part, I guess maybe not 90s or 80s as much, those comedies tend to be spoofs, or they tend to be the Rat Pack movies that are comedies, the teenage coming of age comedy.
Oh, yeah.
Then we kind of, and spoofs were still around, and then kind of spoofs died, and we enter in like the Will Ferrell SNL skit kind of, 2000s wave of comedies that have kind of died.
Big time. Yeah.
And I feel like that wave of Kevin Hart movies was just like, this is not directed necessarily at Kevin Hart, but like that's kind of where you see it tail off.
He was the last comedy star.
Yeah.
Easily.
And now we just kind of get smatterings of different things. Like you'll grab, I'm trying to even think, like what's a really good comedy that has come out that is more of just a straight comedy in the sense that it is anything, like not a dramedy where it tends to be drama more than comedy. What's the last one that kind of hit the waves? I can't even think. You should know. You're the guy that knows these things.
For me, it was No Hard Feelings.
No Hard Feelings. Which one? Was that the Jennifer Lawrence movie?
Yeah.
Okay.
It was good. I mean, more of like
it was popular.
More of like the raunchy comedy side, but it's still a straight comedy. I liked it.
Couple romantic comedies here and there with Anyone But You. And now we're looking at this A24 one that's about to drop. What's that called again? Like something?
Materialist. I don't think that's a straight rom-com, or that's going to be a drama.
Probably a dramedy, but you know what I'm like?
Yeah.
Like we've seen a little bit of more of a rom-com, I guess, here and there, off and on. Anyone But You was really big and really successful.
I also think love triangles are gonna come back.
I hope
I think
so.
that's Materialists and Challengers, and I think even Saltburn isn't a love triangle, obviously, but I guess kind of,
Is Challengers really a love triangle at the end of the day, though?
Yeah,
No.
those two were in love with each other.
I
Those
think
two tennis players.
I think they were, but I don't know if there was really as much of a triangle as it was more of just
But it's playing on like the
a
love
pong.
triangle. It's playing on the love triangle dynamic thing. My point is that I do think like younger audiences are kind of curious about like those types of dynamics within movies. I feel like there's something to them, and I think
I agree
Materialist
with you
is going
there.
to continue that trend. That's all I mean.
Challengers was like the two guys were. It was Pong. The two guys were Pong, and Zendaya took charge. Like
Oh
she was
yeah,
just in charge
yeah.
of what both of them did. But after watching Twilight, God, I hope they don't come back. To be honest with you,
Maybe not to that extent, but I don't know. I don't know. I feel like they should try. Studios should try with that more. I think there's something there.
well, hopefully, if Spaceballs 2 hits, if Scream or Scary Movie hits, if Naked Gun hits, I think Naked Gun's going to be a success. I think Naked Gun is going to
It
be
looks
good. And
good.
Liam Neeson
The
is
trailer looked
the
good.
perfect fit at his age
Yeah.
right now to take up that mantle
Mm-hmm.
from Leslie Nielsen. But if they hit and we see the spoof kind of come back, I think we will slowly start to see more slapstick, more bring a couple of those style movies back. You know what I mean? That are really just straight comedies. And I hope they do hit. I hope they don't feel. I hope Spaceballs 2 feels the way when you watch Spaceballs. I hope Naked Gun feels like that too. Like it feels as that old school feeling of a spoof to you, and it's not just like a YouTube spoof. You know what I mean? I hope
No,
it
I get
doesn't
you.
feel like YouTube spoof but big budget. I hope it feels a little bit more than that.
For sure.
But yeah, anyway, should we wrap this up?
Yeah, I'm all good now.
All right, guys, what did you think of everything you talked about? Comment below, let us know, like, subscribe, share. We'll see you in probably 2-3 weeks.
Yeah.
So yeah, thanks for watching, and check everything out. Thank you, Moo Patrons, and as always, thanks for watching, Mom.
See you guys.